Well, thank you very much for inviting us here and well, for taking the time to listen to us. My name is Søren Pugliese Bassi. I'm the co-founder and CMO of Technisys. Technisys is a digital banking technology company that's been in business for 25 years and created a platform, a full stack platform for digital banking to help banks either to transform from the traditional model into new digital models or to create new banks from scratch, new challenger banks. That is another big trend of the market right now. And here with me is Søren from Danske Bank.
Yes, Søren from Danske Bank. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for the bank here in the UK. I can see we have people here from all over the world, so maybe I'll just start by introducing Danske Bank. Danske Bank is, I would say, a medium-sized bank globally. We rank just about 60 in the global ranking of banks. So we're not as big as JP and Bank of China and so on, but we're definitely up there somewhere. We are regionally primarily focused around Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, Finland, but do also have banking here, or do bank clients here in the UK, where we are regionally focused in Northern Ireland. We are the biggest bank in Northern Ireland. We are a full-service bank. We do everything from retail, small business to corporate, and do also do pension and investment and so on. So we have the whole portfolio. I've been with Danske Bank for 12 years. I have been doing everything from being director from our core banking systems to now being sent here for a couple of years as a Chief Digital Officer for UK, where we are trying to take some of the Scandinavian approaches to banking and try it out in a UK context. And just to share a little bit about what we have done in Scandinavia, I know you are very interested in mobile pay.
Yeah.
Mobile pay is a payment solutions that we have developed. In App Store, it rates number 2, right after Facebook, just to put things in a context. Before I moved here, I had never seen a check in my life, ever. And I hadn't held a coin or a note in my hand for 3 years before moving here. So that is just putting things in perspective to how different things are from a society perspective.
And let us know, because most of us here wants to learn about these digital transformation processes. Which were the key motivations of Danske to enter a transformation project?
I think maybe calling a transformation project is probably too limiting. I think we have realized that things are changing faster and faster, and it's not something you start a digital transformation and then you're suddenly done. It's something you constantly have to be doing now. We, like many others, have realized that, and I might be provoking some people here, but there's actually not more innovation happening now than there used to. I would actually say it's probably slowing down a little bit in banking compared to how it used to be. We've been through some pretty big innovations within banking. Going from cash to cards was a very big innovation. What is changing, and what is changing right now, is the pace of the change. So even though the impact of the innovations are probably not bigger than they used to be, there are constant changes happening. And we realized, like many others, that in order to cope in this new world, we have to change the way we work. We have to change the way a bank operates to be able to innovate at a rate of change and at a pace which compares to what we are seeing from challengers and tech giants.
Yeah, we have similar experience with our customers. Actually, what we say is that the customers are changing fast their habits, and so the banks need to change and to innovate on their offerings to the customers, offering new experiences rather than launching products and let's products like checking accounts live happily ever after. In these days, the customers needed to change, and to keep the pace of that change, are fintechs now helping or competing? How do you see the fintech ecosystem connecting to the banking business?
I think initially we and many other banks were thinking that challenger banks and fintechs would be big competition, and I think we realized more and more, and probably also fintechs have realized that there is a real partnership opportunity. Incumbent banks have a relationship with their clients. It's a relationship that isn't easily earned. They trust us with some of their most valuable things, their money. And through time, they have found out that when you deposit money to an account, it stays there. And that's a hard-earned thing that isn't easy to come by. And I can see that a lot of fintechs and challenger banks have figured out that the cost of acquisition of a customer, even getting their brand out there, is really, really difficult. Getting someone to download an app onto their phone is not the easiest thing on earth. And to be honest, who wants 10 apps to do their banking? Very few. So you're competing in an environment where it's very hard to reach the customers. And a lot of fintechs have seen that they can reach the customers through banks. At the same time, me being a bank, I only want to do one thing: provide as much value to my clients and customers as I can. And I only have this many IT people myself, so if I can deliver even more value by working with fintechs, then I'll do that.
Great. And well, on changing, not subject, but going to a very important aspect of digital transformation. We ran a survey in the US with Stanford University about the evolution of digital banks. And one of the most important and most relevant things that the banks point out is the challenge for changing the culture from a traditional, again, where everybody is doing the same task for many years, to this new changing world where the banks need to change, the products need to change, the offering needs to change. How did you face the cultural aspect at Danske?
I think it's spot on. I know McKinsey and a few others have also done surveys within this area, and it comes out repeatedly that culture is the biggest challenge in doing digitalization and digital transformations. And reflecting on it, today, technology is easily available. You can do pretty much anything in the cloud. And looking at strategies from banks, and I've seen a few, they are very similar. You can almost strike out the name and write a different name, and it'll almost look the same, the strategies. Banks know what they need to do, and still, technology is available, they know what to do, and they're still not doing it. So what is it that goes wrong? And I usually say it's something I call the organizational immune system, which makes it very hard for an incumbent bank to change. When you want to try something new, you have a whole organization that is set up at delivering efficiency, and suddenly you want to do something else. So you have the whole organization fighting against this change, which is a cultural thing. I have the CFO trying to manage the money most efficiently, and if you don't have a short-term payback, it might not be the best idea seen from his perspective. You have operations which is set up for delivering mortgages and everything else very, very efficiently. And if they need to do something that they've never done before, it's maybe not the best thing for them. You have a product division, business development, which are set up for delivering banking products. And suddenly we are challenging what is a banking product. So you'll have a whole organization that are used to doing things in a specific way, used to doing specific things. And working with this culture, I think, is the biggest and most efficient way of unleashing the potential of an organization. And we have done it in different ways. When we do radical innovation, which the mobile payment solution that you asked about, we thought it would be too difficult to actually do an innovative project within our organization. So we set up a different organization to do this. We staffed it with 50% of our own staff, and then we hired 50% people from outside, from other industries, simply to get a different perspective and break down how we used to do things. And that was very successful. It's something we've done a few times. It's very good for doing radical innovation. But at the same time, being a digital company also means that you have to take care of your legacy. You need to make sure that you are efficient, that you can offer accounts at a good rate, and you have processes that have the customer at the center, and you don't have too much friction. So you also need to work on the existing organization, the existing reward systems you have. And I think what you need to do is you need to figure out when you try to digitize what is it that's causing friction within the organization. And for me, and this can be different in different organizations. You almost have to have a degree in psychology to do digital transformations today. But for me, it was very much looking at Danske Bank. It was very much a risk-averse organization. I think many banks have, because we are bankers are trained in actually managing risk. That's what we do. We borrow money and then we lend it, and then we manage the risk, and that's how we earn money. But at the same time, bankers are afraid of all risks that are not associated with lending, because that's what they're good at. So when you move into a digital world, you will face other kinds of risks that are unfamiliar. And bankers, in my experience, are not very comfortable with those kind of risks. So that's been something I've been working a lot on. How do we make people comfortable with moving into new lines of business, maybe challenging a little bit what is banking. It's not just current account mortgages and investments.
Great. We have 10 more minutes, so I will make you a last question and then open for questions. Speaking about change and how hard it's changed the organization towards new offerings, I can share an experience from one of our customers that their customers asked for hidden savings account. An account they can save money, but they cannot use it until something happens, until an event is triggered, and that event is determined by the customer, by each customer. So this is something that digital banking is, providing, that the technology that we have available is providing. So in your experience, your mobile payment solution, what's the most, why did your customers like it so much? Why do you think it was a real success for your actual customers?
I think it's hard to probably choose one thing. I can see the use case you're describing, but I think I differentiate between things that will actually get people to download an app and use them, and then things where you ask a customer, do they want it, and they usually say yes to everything. But there are things that are so crucial that they will actually download an app if they can do it. And I think part of the mobile banking app or mobile payment app being so successful for us was that we found a gap in the market. It has some features that actually help the customers. One of them was peer-to-peer transfer, which at that point in time was quite difficult.
Yeah.
But also we had a gap with businesses that didn't accept card payments. Usually very, very small, like flea markets and those kind of very, very small businesses, because the hassle of getting an agreement to accept card payments and so on was just not worth it. And we also looked at both the retail and the small business side at the same time. So besides just doing peer-to-peer, we also looked at the business side. How can we make sure that this works? And part of the reason why it got successful on the business side, I think, is that we basically circumvented the card schemes, so we could adjust the fees a little bit as well to make it more attractive.
Oh, that's great.
So it's basically bank-to-bank transfers that's underlying the mobile bank or mobile payment solution.
That's great. That's great. So, well, we open for questions from the audience.
Really interesting to hear how you're tackling this. I work in agile delivery and see quite a lot of large-scale programs where we're trying to get change into production. I'd be interested to get your perspective on how you've changed the organizations that you've worked in to achieve that faster, so to reduce effectively the time to value from an idea to a customer getting some benefit.
It's a little hard to hear, but from what I understand, you're asking how do you narrow down the cycle time for delivery? Yeah, to produce more value. I think part of it is about organization. I think pretty much all banks now are working in an agile fashion, or at least trying to get there. We have done so as well, and are still changing within that area. I think that's part of delivering faster, to get things out there, prototyping, MVPs. Get things out there, involve customers, get early feedback, figure out what works, what doesn't work, and focus your attention on the things that will actually make a customer download an app and use it, not all the other stuff that is nice to have. That's part of it, but also the organizational challenges that developers face. Because if you look at, we've looked at the minutes, and if you have an IT engineer, at least for us a few years back, they only spend 10% of their time coding. The rest of the stuff they used on discussing and all other sort of stuff, and trying to work on how can we make better use of those core capabilities to actually get some stuff out there is very important. So reducing friction within the organization to allow the smart engineers to actually do their coding and trying things out and connecting them with customers without too many layers. I don't know if that answered your question. I think that's some of the...
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question?
Maybe it's a little bit unfair, Søren, but obviously having worked with Danske in the Nordics, in Scandinavia, and then now having spent some time with us here in the UK recently, what would you say from an industry and a market perspective are the key differences you see between, financial services in the Nordics and here in the UK?
I think I actually don't think the Nordics are, say, the most out there. I think Estonia is a country that I'm looking towards to see how far can you take things. I think there's a different approach to regulation that comes very clear through how you innovate. Here, regulation is much more seen as a driver, whereas in reality, maybe it isn't. From my point of view, we seem to be very protective of the way things are. An example could be vulnerable customers, something I hear a lot of talk about and which I think is really important. But I don't think vulnerable customers necessarily is an excuse to keep things as they are. We are seeing with the mobile banking solution, we are seeing actually that the older generation, 70, 80, is actually using the solution a lot. We have a 60 to 70 gap because for some reason they don't like, but otherwise it's not age specific. And looking at if you don't put in those barriers and try to fix it instead, I actually think you do something good for society. So what we have done in some of the Scandinavian countries, for instance, is that we had as well a generation that didn't know how to use IT solutions and how to do online banking, but we also had libraries that wasn't used. So what do? You make centers where everybody can go in and get assistance to do their banking or whatever they need to do. Because it's not only limited to banking. I actually think that banks have a responsibility to help educate our customers in using digital solutions, because it's not the only place where they need to be digital capable. So we have taken that into our branches in Northern Ireland as well. We have tried not to go from being we do it for you bank, where you come in and queue up and then you do all of your banking after 10 hours of waiting, to doing it completely yourself. We have tried to do assisted service in between. So you come in, you meet an advisor, and he can help you do it and get a feeling of where you are skills-wise and help you get comfortable with it. And then in time, of course, we hope that people will be able to do it themselves and also get more comfortable. An example of how it has changed and will change is actually my dad. My dad was one of those guys who was like, I will never do digital banking. And I took up the challenge, so I gave him an iPad, and he left it on his sofa, and I came back a few weeks later and he was like, it's amazing, I can get tomorrow's news today. And from then onwards, it wasn't long before he was doing all of his banking on his iPad. And I think it will happen, and I just think it's important that we take a responsibility in helping everybody to get comfortable with banking in a different way.
Great, thank you, Søren. Any one final question for Søren? We've got a question on the front table here, thank you.
Hi, Søren. Thanks for sharing all of that. Question I had was in terms of new technologies. What new technologies is Danske embracing to drive your digital journey? You know, there's a lot of new stuff that's out there on the market nowadays. What are you cherry picking, saying, okay, these are the things that we're going to be focusing on, certainly for this for this year?
It's a very good question. I try to turn it around. I choose problems and then I use technologies afterwards to solve them. I think for me that works the best. I've seen so many, and unfortunately also a lot of fintechs that look at a technology and then try to make it work towards a problem, whether it be blockchain or open banking or so on. And they haven't found that one thing that actually make people download an app. So I like starting with the problem and then say, okay, given we have this problem, which technologies would be the best to solve them? And we are, I would say, using all of them. We're a member of R3, we're using blockchain, we are open banking, we are doing a lot of stuff there as well. Even though it's not a new thing with APIs for us, we've been doing it for a while. Advanced analytics, of course, loads of that as well. We have one of those big NVIDIA boxes with 3,000 GPUs crunching numbers for us. So all over the place we're doing different things with technology.
Great, thank you. And thank you, German and Søren.